Before we start this episode, we have a quick message from our sponsors.
We're all bored at home, so now is the time to start that podcast you've always been thinking about.
But first, you need a host. Anchor allows you to automatically upload your podcast to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms, so you literally don't have to do anything.
It makes it super easy for people who are just starting out, like us.
You can upload as much audio as you want, and you can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership.
The best part is it's all for free.
The app is super easy to use and allows you to edit your latest episode either on your laptop or on your phone.
So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Oh, thank you.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of How Did We Not Know That? My name's Jack.
I'm Nat.
And today is our season finale.
Woo! Super exciting.
So Nat is going to present on the last topic for season 1.
Yeah, so we started with an assassination story and we're ending with an assassination story. So today I'll be talking about the assassination of President James Garfield. And this story, it's literally so wild. So before I get into it, Jack, what do you know about President Garfield?
I'm trying to think. Because someone gets assassinated towards the end of the Gilded Age, and then did he get assassinated in the Gilded Age?
It's he's assassinated in 1881, so...
Okay,
yes.
So I think this is the one where after I actually think I know a bit about this, because I was gonna cover it, but then he basically did he get shot at, a train station?
Yeah.
And then it led to a bunch of civil reform because it was a time where everyone just had, one term as president.
Yeah, I think in the Gilded Age episode, you talked about the patronage and spoil system, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of reforms about that system, because of President Garfield, and he was, really progressive about, civil service reform and everything. Yeah, so actually you know a decent amount. I literally, I had heard his name before, but I don't think I knew anything about him until I started doing research on this. But now that I've done my research, I'm actually a huge Garfield fan. This dude is amazing, and, I don't know why we don't talk about him more. So let's get right into it. Americans at the time considered President Garfield to be one of the most promising presidents of their era. He was born to a poor family in Ohio. Shout out to Ohio. And he was actually the last president to be born in a log cabin. So that's how long ago this was. He worked his way through college. He attended Williams College. And then he was a professor at Ohio's Eclectic University, which is now known as, I think it's Hiram College. I don't know how to pronounce it. Hiram College, maybe. He also, became president of this university. So that's cool to see, how much he appreciates education. And he's also a lifelong abolitionist. So he fought to end slavery. And he served as a Union general during the Civil War. So he, is an amazing man.
Yeah, solid. This is unheard of for this time period.
I know. I'm what the heck? How did I not know this? And then he decided to go into politics, right? So in 1863, he was elected to serve as an Ohio congressman, and he was a super big deal in the House of Representatives, and he played a big role in almost every major issue of the time. People really respected him. And he helped win the passage of the 14th and the 15th Amendments, which guaranteed equal rights for freed slaves. So we love that. What a progressive man. What a decent human being. And he was also just, known as a really great person overall. He is described as having, a great amount of energy, eloquence, and charm. He had 5 children, and he was a really good dad. He loved to play with his children and spent so much time with them, which is, super unique, I guess, for this time period. I feel this is, the time period where, people think children should be seen, not heard, and, it's very, strict, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think you, bond a lot with your children back then. But he was like such a good father, and
this is so sad that he dies in this episode. You're really hyping him up.
I know. As I was reading this, I was like, no, not like, this is so sad. I wish it had a different ending, but spoiler alert, like, he dies. But in 1881, he was elected as president. He was a member of the Republican Party, and he became the 20th president. And he was only 49 years old when he was elected, and that made him the third youngest president when he took office. So he was just this super young, progressive guy. So he assumes office, he becomes president, and sadly, his presidency only lasts 4 months. And it actually, yeah, I know, it's really, really short and really sad. But his presidency actually had kind of a rocky beginning because he wanted to make really progressive changes right away. And his biggest focus as soon as he assumed office was to eradicate the patronage and spoil system that was dominating the U.S. government. So Jack kind of mentioned it in a previous episode, in our last episode about the Gilded Age. But just as a refresher, the patronage system is when a political party gives important, influential seats in government to its donors and supporters as a reward. And it's also an incentive to have them keep working for the party. So obviously, that's not great because they're being rewarded for their donations and not their merit. So President Garfield was like, no, this is no bueno. And so he clashed with a lot of wealthy Republicans who were trying to buy their way into his administration. And these wealthy Republicans were pretty upset because they had donated a lot of money to his campaign, and they're like, okay, give me the power now. And he's like, no, thank you. And so they were really mad at him. But Garfield was so determined to get rid of corruption in order to clear the way for policies focused on civil rights, education, and economic growth. So, oh my gosh, I love this man. And so on top of all this, so he's fighting with all of his wealthy supporters. And then to top it off, his wife, Lucretia, almost dies from malaria, his first few months in office.
Oh my gosh. He's going through a lot. Well, besides, he hasn't been assassinated yet, but he goes through a lot.
Yeah, it's about to get worse for him. But so far, it's not super great. And so on July 2nd, 1881, President James Garfield was leaving Washington, D.C. to take a much-needed vacation in New England. He just needed a break. And he was so excited because he was bringing his 2 teenage sons with him and his good friend, Secretary of State James G. Blaine. And he was also planning on giving a speech to his alma mater, Williams College. So he was really looking forward to this vacation. So he leaves the White House and he takes a carriage ride to the Baltimore and Potomac train station where he would leave for New England. And for those of you who are familiar with Washington, D.C., the train station no longer exists today, but it was located near the National Mall. Also, just a side note, when I was doing my research, I'm like, wow, he took a carriage ride. I'm like, obviously that makes sense because it's 1881, but in my head I was like, that's so ancient. That's wild.
He's an ancient guy, yeah.
Right? And okay, so President Garfield, he wasn't accompanied by any bodyguards or security because at the time they weren't as worried about assassination attempts.
Yeah, like you said in the assassination or William McKinley was assassinated episode, that wasn't a thing to have Secret Service till after his assassination.
Yeah.
So it's non-existent for Garfield as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so James Garfield would be the second president to be assassinated, and then it isn't until after President McKinley, the third president to be assassinated, where they're like, oh, maybe we should get some security on these guys. But yeah, also it's just so crazy to think about, man, how much has changed from 1881 to today. Because in 2016, I saw President Barack Obama speak, and there was so much security at that whole event, and it was super scary and intimidating. Also, okay, not to get too much into a rant, I guess our level of security that we're used to seeing around the president isn't necessarily like a global norm. So when I was in Canada, like working in the Canadian government, I would just see Prime Minister Justin Trudeau like crossing the street to go to like Center Block, which is like the main, he would go from the Prime Minister's office to the main Parliament building. I would just like see him, and like, yeah, there'd be a couple like security guys with him, obviously, but like he's just like walking down the street.
Actually, same with New Zealand. I remember on their Anzac Day, which is similar to our Memorial Day in the United States, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, was just right there watching like the Anzac parade and everything. I was like, I could talk to her right now. I have never seen like any of our presidents this close, and Jacinda's just sitting right there.
Dude, that's so exciting, and that's so, it's like just so wild. I can't think of a better word for it, but it's so wild. And like, actually, the most amount of security I ever encountered in Canada was when Vice President Mike Pence visited Canada, and there was like, the whole street was like shut down, and I was like, wow, how much we have like changed since James Garfield to today.
Yeah,
so,
I wonder if any of these other countries have had like multiple assassinations of their leaders, though, because by the third one we're like, okay, maybe it's a dangerous position.
I don't know. I think it depends like on the region and the country, but like there have been countries like where there are like military coups and like complete overthrows of government too. So yeah. So anyway, at 9:20 a.m. President Garfield entered the station, and he's walking arm in arm with his friend Secretary Blaine. And as the men were crossing the lobby, Charles J. Guiteau, he sneaks up behind the two men, and he drew his pistol. And a witness would later recall that Guiteau's eyes were steady, and, quote, his face presented the appearance of a brave man who is determined upon a desperate deed and meant to do it calmly and well, unquote. So Guiteau fired 2 shots at the president from point-blank range, which we discovered in our first episode is, like, from right in front of you. Like, directly next to you.
On your, like, skin or something. Not skin, but, directly touching, like, your body.
Yeah, like, you're super close. And so the first bullet grazed Garfield's right arm, and he shouted, "My God, what is this?" And it was just so, like, it's so sad. He was, like so shocked, obviously.
Yeah, his kids are with him too, right?
Yeah, his kids are in the lobby. Not directly next to him, but like they're at this train station. But he's directly next to his friend, Secretary of State James Blaine. And the second bullet that Guiteau shot was more accurate, and it struck President Garfield's lower back, which knocked him to the floor. And yeah, it was so sad. And immediately the station lobby is filled with screams from terrified and panicked bystanders. And Guiteau actually tried to flee the station, but a man blocked the door, and then a ticket agent and a police officer came and grabbed him so he couldn't leave. And Guiteau is immediately surrounded by an angry mob of bystanders, and they're all shouting, "Lynch him! Lynch him!" And yeah, so they're like swarming up against him, and they're getting violent. And so at Guiteau's own request, the police escort him to the safety of the jailhouse so that he's like not attacked by the angry mob. Mm-hmm. So you might be wondering, who is Charles J. Guiteau? So at the time, he's 39 years old. He's from Illinois.
Awkward.
Yeah, I know. And he lived a very unique life. He's also not very mentally sane, and family members and acquaintances had always suspected that he was insane. He was not mentally sound. He spent the majority of his life drifting from city to city. He had a million different jobs. At one point he was a lawyer, a preacher, a bill collector, and a salesman. And he even spent some time living in a free love religious commune. But even though the commune practiced like group marriage and they wanted to love everyone, they kicked Guiteau out because he did not vibe well with them, I guess. But I think the craziest thing he ever did was decide to attend the University of Michigan.
Oh my god, makes sense. Michigan still sucks.
Yeah, Michigan still sucks. Sorry, guys, but this is like your most notable alumni.
Yeah. No offense to our Michigan listeners. We're not, just kidding. Like, it's not.
Yeah. All of our Michigan listeners just immediately like unsubscribe.
Right.
But no, sorry guys. It's all, we mean well, but. And so additionally, he is very involved in politics and he's a hardcore Republican. He wrote a speech on Garfield's behalf during the 1880 presidential election. And even though like literally no one heard it or paid attention to it, it was just like his own speech, whatever. Guiteau believed that his speech was a key factor in Garfield's victory. In his mind, he was like one of the main reasons why Garfield won. And so after President Garfield is inaugurated, Guiteau moves to D.C. and he visits the White House very frequently. And I don't know the details, but somehow he managed to arrange a personal meeting with President Garfield, which is so messed up. In this meeting, he gave President Garfield a copy of his speech, and he was like, hey, I wrote you this speech, I helped you win this election, can you reward me with a diplomatic position in Paris? And obviously, like, Garfield said no, and Guiteau was furious, he was enraged. He was really upset with Garfield's view on, like, his work towards removing the patronage system, and he wanted revenge because he thought he had been like screwed over.
Yeah, I remember reading that he really thought that he deserved this position, and then to not get it was like, which that's hard because that's like a diplomatic position to be sent overseas and like the government pays for you to handle international relations. Like you have to take, you see like Nat and I are studying to just take a test for a chance to get to do that. So like to just demand it in that time, which I don't know how diplomats were assigned back then. Was it probably part of the spoil system too?
Yeah, I think it was kind of like you rewarded your friends and like your top donors at the time. But that's why Garfield wanted to change all that, because he's like, we should be sending our best and our brightest, not the most wealthiest. So
right,
yeah. But Guiteau like really took it personally, and he like became obsessed. One night while lying in bed, Guiteau had what he described as a flash of divine inspiration. He thought that God wanted him to kill the president, and that the murder of James Garfield was a mission from God. He was convinced that the death of James Garfield would save the country because it would allow his vice president, Chester A. Arthur, to take his place. And after this decision, Guiteau stalked Garfield across Washington for weeks, waiting to shoot him. So he like was really determined. It wasn't just like a one-time thing. It was like a really long process. He was so methodical about planning this murder. It's really frightening. He conducted target practice with an ivory-handed .44 caliber pistol, and he bought this specific gun because he thought it would look good in a museum one day. He tried to take a tour of the district jail because he assumed he would be living there once he was arrested.
That's literally so creepy. What?
Yeah, dude. And then, listen to this. He carried a letter in his pocket that was addressed to the White House saying, quote, "The president's tragic death was a sad necessity, but it will unite the Republican Party and save the Republic. Life is a fleeting dream, and it matters little when one goes," unquote. Like this, it's so creepy.
Yeah, that's creepy. Wait, okay, I'm curious, does he have any money? Because we know during the Gilded Age from the last episode, so you want to be a billionaire? There's just like insane amounts of wealth disparity between people in the United States. So I'm curious as to how much money he had and if he was able to buy his position, like, or if he attempted to.
Yeah, I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't know how much money he had, but I would assume he had enough to live comfortably because, like, he keeps changing his job and he keeps moving locations. So I don't think he came from, like, an incredibly wealthy family, but I think he, like, made just enough to be able to switch careers, like, every year and then move across the country all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he doesn't sound like he has a lot of, like, high morals either, so who knows, like, what other stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he's working, like, 14-hour days in a factory.
Exactly. Like, he doesn't have a 401k, I don't think. Like, he's not saving for retirement. Okay, so after he is shot by Guteau, President Garfield is lying down on the train station floor, and he's bleeding profusely. And after only a few minutes, 10 different doctors arrive at the scene to examine him and try to locate the second bullet. And so this will be, like, the whole struggle is, like, no one can ever find the second bullet. And at the time, nobody knew it, but this bullet had missed Garfield's major arteries and vital organs, and it, like, lodged itself near his pancreas, which this is, like, a survivable injury. However, the group of doctors that were, like, there at the scene, they were well-meaning, but they only made the situation worse because they were using unsterilized instruments and, like, dirty fingers to treat the wound, and so this introduced a lot of germs to it and caused a major infection.
Yeah. That's so sad because isn't the William McKinley assassination, if I'm remembering correctly, wasn't it the second bullet as well that ended up getting infected and he died?
Yeah. Yeah, it was, like, the same thing where, like, the first bullet, like, barely bothered him and, like, it barely hurt him, and then the second one was, like... And they never removed the bullet, so there are, like, quite a few similarities between the two assassinations, but... And so after a full hour of excruciating prodding...
He's probably no anesthesia, just fingers in there.
No, literally, like, and he's just on this train station floor for an hour, and, like, all these people are just, like, poking at him, and oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. So after an hour of this, President Garfield was carried from the train station to a bedroom in the White House, and the doctors didn't think he would survive the night, but Garfield was, like, really strong, and he put on a brave face for his children, because they were, like, with him at the scene, and he, like, told his children that, like, he was gonna be okay, he's gonna make it. And the newspapers reported medical updates daily, and Americans read each update extremely intently, and he stayed strong the first few days, but his condition got worse after his doctor, his doctor's name is Dr. Willard Bliss. Like, literally, his first name is Doctor.
Like, what?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
So it's Dr. Willis Bliss.
Yeah.
You can tell what his mom wanted him to be, like.
Yeah, I'm like, he had no choice in his future.
That's some pressure, yeah.
Yeah, like, if your name is Doctor and then you become, like, a stand-up comedian. Like, I don't know. Like, you got no choice. But anyway, so Dr. Bliss, he administered heavy doses of morphine and alcohol. And this made Garfield really sick, and it left him weak and emaciated. And still, like, none of these doctors could find the second bullet. So Dr. Bliss actually invited Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone. He invited him to the White House to try his new invention, the metal detector. He wanted him to use it to try to find the second bullet. But, like, this didn't work for two reasons. So first, there was a lot of interference from the metal springs on Garfield's bed. And then second, Alexander Graham Bell was only allowed to search the right side of his body because Dr. Bliss incorrectly believed that was where the bullet was lodged.
Dude, I feel like Dr. Bliss is not a doctor. I feel like his first name was Doctor, and they misunderstood.
Like, is that his only credential? Is that his name is Doctor? So, like...
He really was a stand-up comedian. This is what actually happened.
Honestly, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's really frustrating, like, in hindsight, to see how
you could just handled. Put him on the ground and then check his whole body.
Yeah, I don't know why he was, like, so stubborn about only the right side. Like, I don't know if it took a long time and, like, was hard for President Garfield to, like, bear. But, like, I don't know. Why wouldn't you just search the whole body while you're there?
Conspiracy theory. What if Dr. Bliss actually supported the assassination because he wanted the patronage system to continue?
Dude, oh my gosh. That would be insane. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like it. Why would you, what doctor would just be like, nah, check just one side. And then if it's not there, then you're like, well, like, just check the other side. Like, if you couldn't find it on one side.
Right? And it's the president of the United States. Like, you guys, like, you have the whole country, like, trying to... Yeah. Like, this is the best guy?
Yeah.
Really?
Literally anyone. Like, get another doctor, please.
Yeah. Honestly. Yeah, I mean, I know nothing about medicine, but it seems fishy. Mm-hmm. But, so by September... so as a reminder, so Garfield was shot in July. And by September, President Garfield had a massive infection. Like, he was in sepsis. I think that's what you call it. Like, sepsis, where, like, your entire body and all your organs are infected. And this was most likely caused by his medical treatment. Yeah. And he was left with a persistent fever, and he had, like, abscesses all over his body. Like, I think that's, like... welts, kind of, like, okay, I don't really know,
like blisters, almost like boils,
kind of like that. Okay, like, I think they're, like, really painful though, and, like, everything is, like, festering, and he's really not doing well. So before his shooting, he was 210 pounds, and by the time of his death, he's 130 pounds. Wow. So he lost so much weight, like, from all these infections.
What was the time progression? Sorry.
No, you're fine. It was beginning of July, and then spoiler alert, he dies early September. So,
whoa, he lived a long time, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, I was assuming it was going to happen in a few days. I was like, how do you drop 100 pounds in, like, a week or something?
One day? Dude, no. Yeah, it's, like, really sad, though. Like, the doctors did not think he would survive the first day. Like, they thought he was going to die within a matter of hours. But he held on. But, like, he was in an extreme amount of pain this whole time. So he's, like, suffering for months. So it's, like, really sad. Mm-hmm. And so, like, so President Garfield is finally taken to a cottage on the Jersey Shore because they thought that the cold sea air might help revive him, and he wanted to be, like, in a peaceful place. And however, after 79 days of excruciating pain, James Garfield died on the night of September 19th, 1881, and he was president for only 200 days.
That literally sucks.
It really sucks, and, like, I don't know, just the reason for his murder is kind of frustrating too.
Yeah, they kill all the best presidents. They really do be like that.
Really? What the heck?
Yeah, it just shows, like, I guess, when you try to challenge the status quo, how dangerous it can be. Yeah, especially really important changes, like ending slavery, shot. Like, civil rights movement, shot. Like,
yeah, like, it's pretty bad. Corruption. Like, man. Yeah, it's a difficult thing. Yeah, now let's see what happens to Guiteau. So, Charles Guiteau, his murder trial began in November 1881, so, like, pretty much, like, a couple months after President Garfield passes away. And he was hated so much by the public that the court had to go through 150 different men in order to assemble an impartial jury. And on 2 separate occasions, people had, like, come and tried to shoot him. So, like, everyone hated it. Okay. Yeah, people were so pissed. They were like, dude, we really liked him, and you suck.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And so, at his trial, Guiteau pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, arguing that the murder had been God's act and not his. And this is... like, fun fact, this is actually one of the first high-profile cases in American history for, like, someone to use the insanity plea in court. Wow. So that was, like, a first for them. Mm-hmm. Guiteau, his lawyers also argued that President Garfield's death was the doctor's fault and not his. And I thought this was, like, super interesting. And this is actually, like, partly true. Many historians believe that Garfield would have survived if it weren't for the limitations in medicine in the late 1800s. But it still like would have been difficult to survive, so who really knows?
Right. And also absolutely, because we talked about in the last episode how low health standards were and they didn't get changed till 1916. That's so gross. Literally. That all just these random people from the train station, well, not random, but random doctors show up at this train station. You assume they're doctors. Maybe their first name is just doctor. And they're just touching your wounds with no gloves, no sanitary equipment. I don't know if they wash their hands.
But dude, probably not. They're just like trying to act and help him immediately, and they don't think about it.
That's a smart lawyer. That lawyer's very smart. If before you even understand infections, like no one understands on a like national scale, people don't really understand how infections work, that the lawyer used that and said that the doctors had killed him from infection. Yeah,
for real. And like, well, they said it was like their medical treatment, so I don't know if he specified infection, but like I thought that was still such a clever argument to be like, yo, like, obviously it had to do with the doctors, and so,
that is like really smart. I don't even think I would have come up with that. I'd be like, clearly this man killed him, but he was insane. Like, that's what I would go with.
Yeah, but, like, despite all of all of his lawyers' arguments, the jury took less than an hour to deliberate, and Charles Guiteau was found guilty in the murder of James Garfield. Surprise, surprise. And on June 30th, 1882, nearly a year after he shot the president, Charles Guiteau was executed by hanging in Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay, death penalty. Oh.
Yeah, he got death penalty. And so obviously, President Garfield's death had a huge effect on the whole country. And in honor of his death, the 1883 Pendleton Civil Service Act was passed. And yeah, I think you're familiar with this, but this act mandated that government jobs had to be awarded on merit rather than political affiliation. And it's one of the most progressive political reforms of the late 19th century, aka the Gilded Age. So, yay. And then Vice President Chester A. Arthur became president. I tried to do research on him. Like, not a lot happened. He kind of just tried to, he was focused on civil service reform, like President Garfield. He only served like 3 years though, so like he served the remainder of President Garfield's term, and then he didn't run for election because he had like poor health. That's all I could find about him.
No, that's okay. I've never heard of this president too, sorry, but it's hard to make a lot of change, especially during that era with all of the really big money, and the government was indebted to all of the wealthy robber barons. So
it's like a lot of work you have on your plate.
And kind of spooky. Like the president just got shot and now you want to continue his policies.
Like he got killed for these same policies, so maybe that's another reason why like President Arthur was kind of like, I'm gonna chill a little bit. Like
just try to stay alive during this term.
Yeah, that's true. And so like I mentioned earlier, the train station where President Garfield was shot no longer exists. It was actually demolished later. But the location the location of the train station is somewhere between the National Gallery of Art and the Federal Trade Commission. And this is actually like one of the most busiest spots in DC. But most of the people don't know the history behind the location or the legacy of James Garfield. And it wasn't until 2018 that memorial plaques were finally put up on the National Mall in order to memorialize President Garfield. So it like took so long, like such very recently, that we're finally like trying to recognize this history. And that's the assassination of President James Garfield. I'm so sad it took me so long to like learn about him, and it's really sad because I think he could have had a lot of potential as president. It's interesting to think like how different the world would be if he wasn't killed.
If he had gotten his chance. That's sad. But thank you so much for covering him. There's so many presidents that I don't really know what they did, and Garfield sounds like an awesome president and just person in general. Yeah. So I'm glad you covered this.
Thanks. Yeah, it was, I mean, it's a wild story. I wanted to end this season, our first season, with an assassination also.
Come full circle. It's really good. I like that we ended it on that. It's really good.
And just a reminder to everyone, there have been four presidents who have been assassinated: President Abraham Lincoln, James Garfield, William McKinley, and John F. Kennedy. So now we know. And so I guess that wraps up Season 1. Oh my gosh. It flew by.
Oh my gosh. Any announcements though? Don't forget everyone to like us on Facebook at How Did We Not Know That. Follow us on Twitter at HDWNKT. Instagram as well, HDWNKT. Check out our Patreon at How Did We Not Know That, where you can become a history hero and support us and get exclusive access to behind the scenes things and poll access so you can help us choose some topics. And subscribe to us on YouTube. Let us know how you're doing.
Heck yeah. And then we're coming back in a couple weeks. You guys don't have to worry. Don't miss us too much. We'll be back shortly with Season 2, which is world history. We're super duper excited about that, so stay tuned. We have literally the entire history of the world to cover. There's so many things we do not know. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you guys soon.
Yeah, thanks for all the support for Season 1.
Yeah, you guys are great.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been an episode of How Did We Not Know That?
If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
You can also follow us on all social media, including YouTube, at How Did We Not Know That?
If you thought our podcast was low quality, we know. We thought so too. Help us improve the podcast by contributing to our Patreon.
Thank you for listening, and see you guys next week.